Hi everyone, my name is Taylor Sparks. I'm the editor-in-chief of Integrating Materials and Manufacturing Innovation. In today's paper, we're going to talk about additive manufacturing and laser powder bed fusion, but we're not talking about metals, and that's a big difference. This work comes to us from researchers at George Washington University, at MATSIS, and Sandia National Laboratories. Corresponding author is Sunny LeBlanc. Okay, so we've been doing additive manufacturing, laser powder bed fusion for structural metals for a long time. We're getting pretty good at it. But they point out here that additive manufacturing for multifunctional materials, things that you might use, for example, in solid state energy conversion, like thermoelectrics, is much more limited. So this paper is going to focus on bismuth telluride. My background is in thermoelectrics, and we're seeing this all over the place. And if you could print these materials, I could see that being a real advantage. So knowing how to additively manufacture the material would be great, but has some challenges. And they're going to address it in this paper by combining finite element modeling, kinetic Monte Carlo simulations, and experiments to figure out the right processing windows and to understand how exactly does this functional material process and behave differently than it might with a metal. Let me just say that there's lots of reasons why you might want to additively manufacture these things. First off, one of the major strategies in the thermoelectric world is to use the grain and the microstructure to reduce the thermal conductivity. And therefore, knowing the microstructure that arises from additive manufacturing is a big deal because it could literally change the performance of the material's efficiency in converting waste heat to electricity, for example. The catch is that bismuth telluride is not a metal, right? It doesn't behave like a metal. Take a look at the thermal conductivity, right? It can be the reason we use it in thermoelectrics because it has low thermal conductivity. It can be down to about 1 watt per meter Kelvin, right? Very different. So to expect it to behave like a metal when you're printing it is simply not going to work. But it's not as simple as simply calibrating the model to lower thermal conductivity. It behaves differently. You have anisotropy, for example, here. You have very different melt pool physics and very different solidification kinetics. So if we're going to try and use the same approaches that have worked for metals, we have to ask ourselves, are they even going to work for these types of functional materials? Let's take a look at this figure. I think it's going to help answer that question. What you see here is a bunch of different microstructures where you're looking at sort of the melt pool conditions as a function of laser power and the scan speed, just 2 parameters, right? And what do you notice here is that there are a lot of problems. In fact, only one of these 10 right here at 25 watts, 400 millimeters per second, produces the sort of stable processing window that you would expect to see, similar to like what you see in metals. All the others are dominated by all sorts of problems. You've got Marangoni convection, you've got lots of keyhole formation. This is not great. So what this suggests is right from this preliminary experimental study, it's suggesting that the processability window for at least this functional material is significantly different than metals. It's going to be tighter, it's going to have harder tolerances to meet, so modeling is going to be more important. So let's take a look at the modeling. What we're doing here is a finite element method to capture the thermal simulations. And then they're pairing that thermal simulation with the Sparks code, great name, right, out of Sandia National Lab. And that's going to allow them to simulate the microstructure that arises from this. Ultimately, what they're able to see is pretty good agreement in the grain morphology, the grain size, and the spatial distribution. You can see how well the above sections boxed in blue versus the lower sections in gray for each of these different conditions matches pretty well what they were able to try and simulate with this simulation package approach. They did point out that it did not match well as you enter this Marangoni flow or in the keyhole regimes. So the takeaway for me is pretty interesting. Essentially what I'm learning from this paper is that it is going to be possible to use some of the similar tools we built for metals, but we have to know when we're using those in the right regime. And if you pass over into the different regimes, right, in diffusion dominated, it's one thing, but when you pass over into the fluid flow regimes, they're simply not going to work well. And as usual, in IMMI, we're less interested in sort of one-off studies and more interested in new ideologies and frameworks. And this paper basically is telling me that, okay, the rules that we've derived for laser powder bed fusion, if they're made for metals, they can't just blindly be used for functional materials because you have new instability modes, you've got narrower processing windows, and you've got tighter coupling between your thermal and your microstructure behavior. So these physics-informed modeling pipelines, while they can work, we have to respect the differences. I hope you'll read all about it in the latest issue of IMMI.